Oh, here's another thing I thought of earlier. Speaking of DMT, there's this guy I keep seeing videos of where it was giving people DMT and then he projects a laser onto the wall. Have you seen this guy?
And they claim to see the Matrix.
And they-
Day 4 of no laptop for old Denny Poo.
What happened?
Spilled coffee on it. Whoops. God. Ugh. It's Tinfoil Friday on MKUSUAL.
It's like MK Ultra, but more normal. If that isn't
With your host, Nick Dominy. Sorry, keep going.
well, if that isn't a first world problem, you got your space age technology that was ruined by
It's not ruined yet. We don't know.
By your-
The internet told me to leave it off for 3 or 4 days.
your simple morning pleasure.
Yep, that is a very first world problem. We have another first world problem.
Tragic though, and extremely frustrating. I'm not trying to diminish it.
Oh, that's
Just
okay.
saying.
When we finish this episode, I'm loading that thing up. Today's gonna be the day. It's gonna be okay.
You
Please,
waited patiently.
God. I waited patiently. I did
You
everything
did all
I
the
was told to
things.
do.
Yeah.
All right, except for the coffee part. I wasn't supposed to do that.
Well,
Nick, you kind of got a heads up on this week's topic. I did do some research, but I'm also mostly pulling from my own little braino here. My little brainule.
your organoid intelligence.
My organoid, my built-in organoid computer.
They don't want us to know we have quantum processing inside our bodies.
Dude, that probably is true, though. The brain.
Yeah. Probably the most advanced computer.
I really think the smell might work quantumly. Anyway.
Yuck. Gross.
Farts, how many dimensions is a fart in?
All of them.
All possible dimensions. A turd, 1 dimension. A fart is just like
We exist in the third
particles.
dimension. It's
Or is a
only
wave. A fart is a wave, and a turd is particles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Until you observe it.
today, actually, before I say the topic, here's how I confirmed we'd be doing this topic. Last night, I'm driving home. I see a YouTube video. Y'all can look it up. It's by Professor Simon Holland. I bring him up all the time. I really love him. I love his YouTube channel. He's really serious, and he's a UFO guy, but he sticks to like very particular things that he knows stuff about. He's really into Rendlesham Forest, which was a crash.
He's a British dude.
Yes,
I
he's
think
a British
I've
dude,
seen-
white hair, looks kind of.
Yep. I've seen you watching his stuff.
Really into Rendlesham Forest. He's really into like dirigibles and
Okay.
how
Blimps.
UFOs could be, more like advanced. Like he's the one who thinks the Tic Tac UFOs could be like advanced balloons with like navigation stuff on it, and that's why they can shoot like.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, he had a video last night that was like, "This is the first time I've ever been scared to post," or whatever like that. And I was like, "Oh no, he's sick. He's an old guy.
no.
Oh God." So I started up, and it's not about that at all, thank God. Since he's so focused, he's located in France, but he's an Englishman. He's so focused on this Rendlesham Forest stuff, he gets leaks. And he gets leaks and he gets stuff from people who were involved and people who were tangential, and he's working on like a big documentary about it.
Okay.
And he said he got what he thought.
He's just a chill ass dude, and people trust him.
He's a goat farmer, actually. He quit being a professor and he farms goats. But he can, because he has all these people who he hadn't even released all of them yet, he can pretty much verify when someone comes to him if they were where they said they were and all this stuff.
Okay.
Okay, well, he got this leak involving Rendlesham Forest.
That's the one next to the Air Force Base?
Yes.
Okay. When was it? 80s?
I believe it was 80.
Okay.
Long story short, there was this event in the 60s where Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, came out and kind of just out of nowhere said nuclear weapons don't really scare him because they have a weapon that could destroy the world.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is something I always forget happened.
The fuck you later 9000.
Yeah.
I think is the translation.
And I think Doctor Strangelove might have been partially based on this, and because some people assumed it was like an automatic trigger, like
Yes.
you cannot stop it.
Yeah.
Some people, I guess, in the U.S. government and English government thought that maybe it was, what do they call it, psionics, or it was psychic warfare.
Oh.
Okay. So that kicked off our psychic warfare stuff. Anyway, the leak he has is that they picked Suffolk, England, which, by the way, is apparently like the witchcraft capital of England, to summon something.
God dang it.
And to work with it. And then, oddly enough, y'all can go watch the video yourself. Again, I highly recommend the YouTube channel. He kind of just veers off from the witchcraft angle and goes completely into psionics and mind control and MK Ultra. And he has witnesses who essentially saw them setting up what you're meant to assume is a fake UFO crash. He has people who were on the base who saw, like, one, I think they believe, like, unknown American dignitaries. He thinks it's the CIA's fixer guy, I forgot his name, coming in, and they're using these British military people and these American people to, like, set up this area. And I have heard before, I heard back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that some people think there were like psychotropic or like hallucinatory mist and stuff, because there was like a mist associated with this event that was kind of shouldn't have been there based on the weather pattern. But he's pretty sure there's good evidence now that that entire event, and here's what the other leaker said. The other leaker said pretty much everyone involved in this, including the 3 men who like touched the craft and were near the craft, all were dragged in. Oh, and there was a secretary too who lost her mind and now lives in Italy and refuses to talk about any of this. They were all dragged in and interrogated by these CIA people, which probably include a fuck ton of drugs.
Yes.
And they believe that this whole thing was a big he's kind of, I don't know what he's pointing to exactly, but one thing he's pointing to is that this whole event, which is one of the most famous UFO events in history, was a very meticulously planned mindfuck on ourselves, essentially for no other reason other than to just see if we could do it.
Okay. That's chill.
It's chill. And here's how deep that mindfuck goes. I believe Renison Force is the one where the guy thinks he got like codes. He like touched the crowd and got codes in his mind and shit. And all 3 of the soldiers who saw it, essentially, if you never heard the story, it was just at this Air Force base. They saw some unexplained object. They saw this, like, I believe, orange light come down the sky, and there was a UFO crash, and 3 people went to investigate it. And it was just, and they all have missing time, and they all 3 kind of saw slightly different things, but they all swear by it. One guy got psychic communications. Well, it's come out, and it's probably going to come out that the whole thing was a big mindfuck. Now, and I don't, by the military and the CIA for no apparent reason other than to keep up with some Russian thing. But then there's this witchcraft element, which is just kind of dropped in there for no apparent reason. He kept mentioning that Suffolk is known by the military as a place where reality is weak. There's certain points on Earth where like reality is weaker than in other places, which is why you would see things like a Bigfoot or just the weird shit happens in these places. That's a lot of people who do like magic and witchcraft.
Is it like a veil is thin kind of situation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, same idea. Yeah.
It's not like because when you said reality is weak, that like things of your mind will manifest is another way.
That's another possible.
Okay.
I think
This is like a real fucking Lovecraftian
yes.
hellscape over in England.
Yes, which would also help you do things like these psionics, but
so we could go there and just manifest a big ass pot of gold.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm sure that's people tried alchemy and shit. You know what I mean? Like, we could go to Suffolk and manifest a big ass particle. But that's
Anyway.
also, these areas are also where they keep these like high energy fucking antennas and shit.
Okay, that was gonna ask that because isn't there in Britain? There's like a bunch of antennas that point towards Russia, and they're like some weird radar.
This is the same guy who did that stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
He believes that it's like a Tesla energy weapon that was meant to like protect Eastern Europe from
and
an
it's
invasion.
pointed at like St. Petersburg or something. It's pointed at like major points in.
Yes, and it's at least pointed in that general direction. Now, you would point a radar that direction, but there was something about when the Soviet Union...
Debunked.
There is something about when the Soviet Union... and he's still doing research on that. He had a good video 2 weeks ago about the power source of that radar thing.
Okay.
It has its own nuclear power plant, probably, but like... when the Soviet Union collapsed and we started doing all our deals like... Ukraine doesn't get nuclear weapons, all that shit, like working out the details here of how we're gonna like disarm the world kind of, or make things safer. One of the initial demands of the Soviet Union was that they shut down that station, which kind of doesn't make any sense if it's purely... But yeah, this is in that area too. But my main point here, and kind of the topic of the episode is, are aliens a psyop? Are we all being fooled?
A psychological operation.
Yes. Aliens. UFOs. Abductions. Is this a big psyop? And I have some examples of people and different theories and people who have whistleblown about this. And I'm going to connect the Holland thing to the most recent people. I believe, who is this most recent...
I haven't been following the details. I don't know any of the names.
The most recent...
Can
you ask us the most recent News Nation whistleblower egg UFO? What was this guy's name? I watched his full 3-hour. I believe it's Jason something. He claimed that he rescued it, or he like picked up an egg-shaped UFO.
Oh, the helicopter guy?
Yeah,
Jake Barber?
Jake Barber, that's right. Okay.
U.S. Air Force veteran alleges involvement in a secret government program tasked with retrieving unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP. Asserts that during his tenure, he encountered egg-shaped craft of non-human origin, describes it as a white egg, lacking any visible engine, and emphasized extraordinary and anomalous nature.
And he claims that these things spoke psychically to him.
Supported by video footage, corroborated by testimony from 3 other veterans.
Now, apparently this guy, Jake Barber's like, when I was so hyped for this News Nation special. I was so hyped. I was like, oh my God, because they kept saying we have the first video evidence of a UFO crash retrieval. And they showed it.
They did.
It's just like an egg coming from the...
It's night vision. They're like
Yeah.
picking it up with like a basket.
But a lot of people, I will say, even as a believer, and even as someone who wants to believe, this was like the most skeptical I've ever been. Because one, apparently this guy is the real fucking deal.
Corroborates claims from Officer David Grush, another whistleblower, testified before Congress.
And his service record's like impeccable. He's like a special operator guy. He even had to go into the white world and have like a whole cover story to be allowed to do these flights. Everybody attests to him. There's a whole thing where him and his friends are sitting around a campfire. But here's the thing. I hate to say this. Have you seen a picture of Jake Barber? Have you seen him talking? Have you seen...
No.
To me, he looks whacked out. Like, he looks like he's been through some shit. Okay. Then he starts talking about how there's this feminine energy coming from the egg and it's cyclically in him. And during the interview, he's saying shit like, and it's the same energy in me right now that's like making me do this. Like, he's like been possessed by this egg UFO. Then he claims, and you can fact check any of this on ChatGPT because I have no way of doing this right now. He is starting a company.
I believe you.
He's starting a company with his buddies. I know, but I'm worried I'm going to say something stupid.
No,
I believe he's starting a company with his buddies, and he claims that they can now, at will, summon egg UFOs.
You just said this man is possessed by a feminine egg UFO, and then you're like, I'm worried I'm going to say something stupid.
Well, that's his own
I know. I know. Objectively, that's funny.
And to me, this is the first time First of all, here's something you got to know about these whistleblowers.
Let's just like
David Garush, Lou Elizondo, Jake Barber. I just want to get this out there. These people are not. These are not Bradley Mannings or Julian Assanges or.
they're not rogues.
These are not rogue people who are breaking the law and releasing stuff illegally. These are whistleblowers who have gone through very specific legal processes to be cleared.
To protect the information, to validate the information.
To validate and release certain information
Yeah.
that essentially the government is okay with being out there. Otherwise, these people would be dead or in prison. So for some reason, whether they're preparing us for something or they're messing with us, they want us to think that this man is possessed by an egg-shaped feminine UFO and can summon these eggs at will. And this was the first time in my life where I was like, this sounds like complete fucking bullshit. It's one of those things like the meme, like I believed in UFOs all my life till the government said they were real, and then now I'm skeptical.
That's a legitimate, logical step to take.
And then this Holland thing comes out, where he's actually scared. He's like, I'm scared releasing this. I'm going to be hurt to say that this famous. He's not scared to talk about, oh, there might be aliens and stuff, but he is scared to say, we might be doing experiments on people to fuck up their minds because for whatever reason we want people to believe in these things.
Well, okay, you mentioned Dr. Strangelove. That's the whole thing. Is like it in the movie. It is a the whole movie is a psychological operation. It just so happens that one cowboy B-52 bomber pilot has to see his mission through, and then they lose communication, and he's like, nope, I got the order, I have to follow orders, I have to nuke Russia,
Yes.
at all costs. But both sides are like, well, we don't really want this. There's like a guy who stops it from happening on the Russian side and tries to stop it on the American side. Nobody wants it.
The actual levers of power work correctly to like stop it, but the problem is there's that one general who hatches this plot, and then there's this one guy willing to fucking pull the trigger.
Yes.
And that's all it takes for the whole system to break down. Two people. One guy sends the thing up the chain he shouldn't, and takes control of that base, and the other guy is just crazy enough to do it.
Yeah.
So what are they trying to get us to believe, and what are they trying to get us to do? And by the way, I'm not renouncing my belief in aliens or alien abduction. I believe there's a phenomenon there, etc. But that does not negate the possibility that we could be using and playing around with that, whether it's witchcraft or psionics or MK Ultra type stuff.
And maybe it's a way to like project an image to an adversary that we have access to this, something above nuclear weapons, like something that's incomprehensible.
Yes.
So that Saudi Arabia or another Iraq or some North Korea, someone is like, well, maybe we shouldn't attack.
Well, I'd say the Soviet, starting World War II, there were Foo Fighters, which some people believe were plasma weapons, but regardless of what they are, the 50s was in both, we didn't know this at the time, but in the United States, the 50s was a UFO freaking hotbed in the United States. There was shit flying over the Capitol, there was, and then we find out when the Soviet Union collapsed and we got all their documents, same shit was happening there. So what better way...
It was the Diddy party of UFOs.
Yes.
In the 1950s.
So what better way, if you're the United States and you're scared that Russia is going to get more advanced weapons, what better way to make them... If you are both aware that there's something neither one of you can build, what better way to scare Russia than to leak stories that these things are crashing and you're recovering them?
Yeah.
Because that would be telling Russia, hey, we got one. Oh, watch out.
You have a nuke? Well, we have unfathomable horrors.
Mm-hmm. And I still want to, and maybe I'm going to set the witchcraft and demonology stuff aside because I still don't even know why he brought that shit up. Other than I think he's saying he's not, that stuff has always been connected to UFOs, but all the way back to Aleister Crowley, but I think even Simon Holland's not saying everything he knows.
Yes.
I think there's a connection between the drugs and the witchcraft and it all goes into this. And he at one point just flat out, I believe, said in his most recent leak thing, like, they summoned something or made a deal with something. And then he just completely ignores that for the rest of the time and talked about, like, MK Ultra. So on this aliens or psyops series, I'll bring up some important names, dates, and stuff. You can fact check this, or I might have some questions. I would say the very first or the oldest aliens be psyops shit, if you believe this lady, there's a lady named Carol Rosin. She was an aerospace executive, and I believe she was personal secretary to Wernher von Braun. She said that Braun on his deathbed repeatedly told her that the final, quote, enemy would be a fake extraterrestrial threat. Wernher von Braun, NASA scientist, ex-Nazi. I believe he built was it V1 rocket, or he built like the first rockets.
It was
yeah.
a V2. He probably was like, anyway.
He believed
he didn't build them. The people in those camps built them.
Right. Genius, helped get us to the moon. Also a Nazi, part of Project Paperclip. He just flat out repeatedly said on his deathbed that the military-industrial complex was going to go through a series of things with Russia and then terrorists and then rogue nations with WMDs, and eventually they'd run out of shit, and he believed that they were already in the stages of planning in the future a fake alien invasion.
This was 80 years ago? Wait, when did he die?
Yeah, that's the type of thing I need you to Google.
Okay.
I believe he died in the 70s. I think he lived long enough to see the moon landing, if I am not mistaken.
77.
77. All right, so 50
So he
years
saw
ago.
all the Apollo missions and...
Yeah.
Okay.
He saw his work come to fruition, except for one very important project. So it's my one per. I told Shane the other day, he was watching me edit an episode. I went, oh, there's my one per show Hitler reference. But so this is a very serious figure. There's no reason really not to believe Carol Rosin. I believe she's backed up by his other secretaries who vouch for her. There's no reason she would make this up. She didn't ever get any money out of it or any like big attention.
She didn't write a book or...
No, maybe if she did, like this wouldn't.
What was her name?
Carol, Carolrosin. She's not rich from this. She didn't make like documentaries or anything. But she probably read some books, having been close to someone of that, magnitude in history.
She wrote books called Space Careers about how to
get a job.
For the children.
Right. So if anything, saying the government's going to fake an alien invasion would hurt her credibility. Yeah. So Wernher von Braun, very serious dude who worked both in the Nazis and the U.S. space program, all that shit. He says this is going to happen. He was in the secret of the secret fucking programs.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
She did also contribute a preface to The Order of the Nephilim by Simon Treselian, a novel that blends elements of conspiracy and adventure, exploring themes related to ancient secret societies.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Yeah,
I just thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. Who's that? Is it Diane Pose? What's her name? Well, anyway, there's somebody who came out who's a big deal. She's a religious studies professor, Diane Poles. I can't pronounce her last name. She wrote a book called, God damn, Diane P. Religious Studies. She wrote a UFO book about how NASA and stuff is all rituals. And alien stuff is all like rituals.
That's what they allege with CERN and those types of things too.
Oh, there's video of them doing stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, just let's go through here. We're getting a lot of weird leaks. The people who are scared for their lives are saying this shit's a psyop. Then there's people the government are coming out to say no, and they're psychic and they're coming. Okay, Wernher von Braun has been warning since his deathbed 50 years ago, we're gonna run out of stuff. And he also, by the way, that was in the middle of the Cold War, and he had already predicted the rogue Nation WMD, the terrorist stuff, which that's kind of what we're winding through right now, is those things. And then he says the last card is going to be aliens. Now, let's see here. Another person you should know in this theory, and I've read 2 of her books, although it was many years ago, is Carla Turner, my bad.
Okay.
Dr. Carla Turner, alien abduction researcher and experiencer. She coined the term MILAB, MILABS, which is a military abduction meant to mimic what people say is happening during alien abductions. I think some other side characters here. William Cooper was big on MILABs. And Stephen Greer, who is pretty relevant now. He's the, what's that, Close Encounter 5? Stephen Greer's been a UFO whistleblower for years.
It's like the 90s, early 90s.
Oh, yeah, and he's still around, and he's running this program. His most recent documentary and leaks and stuff is this program, oddly enough, CT5. I think it's called CT5, where he takes people out in the middle of nowhere or to specific areas, and they summon UFOs, just like Jake Barber's claiming he can do.
They meditate and then like signal with big ass lasers.
Right.
And then the UFOs will like follow the lasers around the sky and like.
But just like Barber, Greer, and by the way, I think Greer and Barber do not like each other.
Interesting.
Do not like her. I think Barber said, "Oh, I got nothing against Greer." Blah blah blah. Greer is really against a lot of these recent whistleblowers. He says that it's a fucking psyop. He says they're trying to prepare us to say the aliens are bad. Greer believes in the aliens. He just thinks they're like love and light and all this shit. But these two describe a very similar process where you use like intention and basically psionics and magic or whatever you want to call it to like summon these things, but do not get along because they're on opposite sides of like what I believe is this narrative of a UFO invasion.
They both they both believe the phenomenon, but like, this is like, we were talking about this the other day when you were kind of describing this, but to me, it like pinged when you were describing it as like the marketing term optics. Like you take an event and you just need to present it so it's viewed in a certain way for your own benefit or to align with your agenda, or you want your company to appear a certain way, so you take an event and create a marketing campaign so it's viewed in a certain way.
Yes. And how are these whistleblowers, if you look at, especially Elizondo, how is their stuff viewed? It's all through the realm of national defense. We have to study this because it could be a threat.
Yes.
And then Greer is saying that's the psyop, basically. But yes, you can summon them with your mind, blah, blah, blah. Can you look up how Carla Turner died? Because I believe she was murdered. I believe she had some kind of weird early onset cancer, some rare...
Dr. Carla Turner?
I believe she died in some kind of like mysterious...
1996, January 9, 1996, from a fast-moving form of cancer. Some of her supporters speculate her death may have been unnatural due to controversial nature of her research.
Okay, yes. So she started talking about the military is the one doing a lot of these abductions, and then got knocked off.
She wrote books such as Into the Fringe, Taken, and Masquerade of Angels.
Yes. I think the Masquerade is the one I did not read, but I would like to. I think that's the one where she says they're pretending to be like spiritual.
Yeah.
I had somewhere I was going here.
The MILABS.
Oh yeah, the MILABS.
Greer and Turner don't like each other.
Werner von Braun. And the most recent one. Well, okay, I'll give some other historical ones. And I'll give a shout out to some stuff. A good documentary. It's the only movie I've ever bought on YouTube. Mirage Men.
Okay.
Mirage Men follows the story of Richard Doty, who was a guy who was inside UFO circles who turns out was basically an Air Force intelligence officer.
Okay, I've heard of this guy.
Yes. If you're ever on my YouTube on the TV, you should watch Mirage Men. It's in the purchase section.
I've seen some stuff about him.
to me, one of the at least top 2 UFO documentaries ever made, because all it's about is the Air Force intelligence fucking with these researchers and like making them believe things and essentially staging UFO stuff for them. Like they'll be like somebody
Running
like,
psyops.
running psyops to send these researchers down rabbit holes. And he just goes on camera and freaking admits it. So I want to give a shout out to that. Other historical stuff before we get into recent stuff and just kind of shoot the shit. William Cooper again. He's the guy who wrote the Pale Horse.
Beyond the
Pale Horse. We got a copy of that. We should do a review of that eventually. He also says psyop, or that they're trying to Project Bluebeam, Sergei Monast theory. Project Bluebeam, a very famous 1990s theory that they're building energy stuff and hologram stuff, which we might not even need anymore with drones, and that they're going to stage a fake alien invasion and perhaps a fake second coming of Christ. That's another very well-known theory and well-known person who believes this is a psyop. Let's see here. These people don't believe it's a psyop, but they believe there's elements of it. John Lear, who I also believe was killed in some weird, he's an ex-CIA pilot, conspiracy theorist. I believe his father made the Lear jets.
Yes.
He believed the U.S. government staged alien abductions to cover up secret experiments, particularly in underground bases like Dulce. John Lear, another guy who's in the know. He was in the CIA. These aren't just fucking crazy people. Jacques Vallée. Now, Jacques Vallée, he's the guy they based the scientist on Close Encounters of the Third Kind on. First guy to use like computers all the way back in like the 70s or 60s to like do stuff. I've read some of his stuff. He suggested the UFO phenomenon might be part of a control system, either human engineered or by something else for psychological conditioning. His stuff's very interesting. But Lear, Doty, Carla Turner, Werner von Braun, Project Bluebeam, there has always been this thing right under our nose that people tend to ignore because it's more fantastical to be like, and then the praying mantis made a hybrid baby and blah, 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 blah. And maybe all that stuff's true too, or maybe we're working with them, but there's always been this thing right under our nose where there's always somebody who comes out of the blue and says, oh, by the way, a lot of this shit's fake, and they're doing it because they're going to stage an invasion. It's going to cause mass chaos, and what's the point? Control. It's going to be a COVID-style control thing, a 9/11 style control thing, possibly a one world government thing, but definitely everybody stay in your homes. You're going to get your military. It's going to reorganize society around totalitarianism. Because, as Reagan said, you know, if we had a threat from outer space, we'd forget all our differences and we'd have to come together.
Yep.
It'll force us to come together into one thing.
And the thing is not the thing that is, let's say it, well, it's all for the powers that be, let's call it the government, for them to maintain the semblance of control.
Yes.
Or the military industrial complex, or whoever the actors are. It's for the powers that be that are and have been maintaining that perception of control, going back to the marketing thing.
Yeah.
To continue selling that idea to people, they continue to buy it.
What's crazy, I mean, you could just go down a freaking spiral on this, because
Yeah.
I fully believe this is a real thing. But then you got to ask yourself if UFOs are also real. Kind of like these videos where the orbs are fighting drones and vice versa. You're like, what's going on here? Like, there seems to be something non-human, whether it comes from the ocean or space or wherever. And then it's like, so, but then we're going to fake an invasion and we're going to, there's so many like double and triple twists you could go down here. The most recent thing, which is very scary if you've never seen the video, TMZ, oddly enough, TMZ did a UFO special. I've not seen it yet, but I've seen one clip and I've heard commentary on it. Are you familiar with Jeremy Corbell? I bet you are.
Yes.
He's a researcher, he's a journalist, UFO journalist. He runs a show with Greg Knapp, all-time legend, called Weaponized, Jeremy Corbell was part of this TMZ thing, and there's footage, and in the footage he says, I don't think you should release what I'm about to say, but I'll tell you. And then being TMZ, they release it.
Salacious.
Jeremy Corbell, who tends to be very much like, here are my sources, we're going to this thing on Capitol Hill, very much just traditional journalism. You know, we got this leaker who says this. He looks straight into the freaking camera. This happened a few weeks ago, and says, look, you know, I'm not to the point where we can just release this yet. He goes, but I will say it because it is possible if you choose to release this that it could alter the timeline. He looks straight at the camera and says, sometime around 2027, they're going to say there's a ship that we're tracking that's coming from a nearby star system, and we believe it could be hostile, and here's, based on its speed, when it's going to get to Earth, and then that will begin the power consolidation. And he calls it the big lie. He says UFOs are real, but there has been here a long time, and that's a truth. But a lie is coming based on all indications. He believes, based on his sources and stuff, so that they're going to tell us, big mothership, who knows what they'll say, 4 years out, 5 years out, 3 years out. They're going to say it's coming. And that will begin the consolidation of power and the reorganization of things, mass panic. They're going to say, yeah, there's some UFOs here now, but here comes the military brigade. And him and Holland getting these kind of indications at the same time is a big deal for me, because that would seem to indicate that people in these programs, some of them are starting to get a little uneasy, and they're like trying to get it out there to like warn people that these things are not all as they see. You can't necessarily trust. I don't even know what to think about Greer. I have such mixed feelings about him.
Same. I was kind of excited when I discovered him because he seemed to be like trying to do that type of work in the right way.
I agree.
But then his like politics start to become convoluted or something. It's just like, because he was a doctor, so he has kind of like an analytical mind. He claims that he's like advised all of the presidents on this topic since like Clinton.
He's briefed a lot of people, but then sometimes that'd be like his briefing was he was at this dinner and he like stopped by and like told somebody something real. He definitely builds himself up.
Right. He does say things like, I am going to tell you this, and the only way I can is because I have a dead man switch, which is like a cache of information that if he dies will be released, but if he releases before he dies would essentially kill him. So he is like, he alleges, and that in and of itself could be true or a psychological operation to protect himself.
Right.
Because what he is releasing is like damning to the, let's call it the military-industrial complex. Raytheon isn't getting their missile contracts next year if what he's saying is true, or that would like piss, like we know what happens to Boeing whistleblowers.
Oh, yeah.
When they say their planes don't work right.
Oh, yeah. Imagine on what level this guy's in danger. He's probably more safe because what he's saying is crazier.
Yes.
But if people started believing him...
It sounds crazier, so they can like let the fantastic nature of it it can like diffuse into the public consciousness and like just be written off as crazy.
And here's the other thing. Jake Barber, who gives me the creeps. If you ever want to come on, like he tried it with us, but something doesn't seem right about a guy who's saying he's essentially possessed. He's kind of like, I don't understand why Greer has a problem with me, but he's also kind of in a feud with Sean Ryan.
Okay.
Had a Marine on his show.
Yes, I watched that.
Yes, and he claimed there was an octagonal, which, by the way, Jake Barber also talks about. He calls it an 8-gon. I don't know if he has a problem saying octagon. He calls it an 8-gon. And it's essentially this advanced gravity craft, but is made by humans, possibly. This guy, who was the guy who was on? Do you remember the guy whose name is one on Sean Ryan? He's not a UFO guy. He's just he's like a Delta Force or Marines or something.
I don't remember his name.
He had a sighting in like Indonesia of this 8-gon, and him and his team were told to go out to this area. They came upon this craft, which already sounds like the Rendlesham Forum, kind of a psyop, like, oh, you're going to view this UFO. And he claims that human beings, like some kind of like independent contractor or military contractors, came out of this craft with guns or ambushed his like platoon or whatever, disarmed them, got all their military IDs, and then sent them like fucking packing before taking off in this man-made UFO. And then he was told by people in the know that the reason that craft was there and this team of contractors was there were to essentially human traffic people.
Yep.
Because this is during the time when that big, what is that big wave called? A tsunami? This is around the time that tsunami hit. And that they were making people disappear for whatever reason. They were just loading them up into this craft and fucking stealing people. And then Jake Barber comes out.
Michael Herrera was...
Michael Herrera, okay. Who I thought was very believable. He gave me the opposite vibes of Jake Barber.
Yes.
I was like, this guy saw this. And I'm not saying Jake Barber didn't see stuff. I believe what he's saying about what he did is true. The thing that creeps me out about him is the psychic stuff. So Michael Herrera comes out and says he has it on fairly good authority that he witnessed a human trafficking operation involving these crafts. And then oddly enough, for seemingly no reason, Jake Barber comes in and starts talking about this and says, oh yeah, well he saw that, but in my experience, it's not human trafficking. These people go willingly. And we pick them out because they have psychic abilities, and we're like collecting people around the world with psychic abilities. And so he's admitting, Jake Barber seems to be admitting that we're abducting people, but it's happening willingly, which is a really weird, to do that in the way that Michael Herrera saw it happening, which was so clandestine and shit. So you have essentially two people with credible military backgrounds arguing about whether or not, both saying that we're taking people from this foreign country and just disappearing them in a human-made UFO, but they just disagree on whether it's voluntary or not.
Well, they have the perfect cover with a tsunami, because all of those people could be written off as missing because of the tsunami. They're capitalizing on this event if their goal is they need people.
Well, what do they need the people for? Jake Barber says they identify people with psychic abilities. They bring you into this world, and you're paid and you're treated very well, and this is a nice world for you. Michael Herrera is saying, I heard they were just kidnapping people.
Which
one seems more credible? And if you're kidnapping them, why? Put them in the vats that the aliens sent in, full of gooey. Sorry.
You're going into the goo.
You're going into the goo. If you haven't heard of the goo yet, you should look that up. The goo is real. The goo is people.
Most plausible, it is not voluntary.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's a crazy...
Based on my understanding of human beings, not voluntary.
You could... Yes, keep going.
Well... This made me think of like the missing 411 stuff, that like thousands of people go missing in unexplained ways, and it's basically just not talked about. Even in those documentaries, the guy, he was a detective.
Yeah, Politis or whatever.
Yes. He just noticed these patterns, but he even gets into, at the end of one of his documentaries, I think it was in Ohio, there's a UFO sighting, and a UFO comes down over like a high school band that's practicing on the field, and they see it, like dozens of people all experience it. And then a mile or half mile away, there's a woman out hunting. She's in a deer stand, and she sees like she describes it as like, the way she describes it made me think of like the Predator, like the invisible camouflage, where it's kind of like you can see the silhouette, but it's like you can also see the trees behind it, and it's like glimmering or like distorting.
Yes.
She describes like an apparition or a creature that is like at the same exact time that this craft comes down. And that's like at the end of, he gives like 3 very
Oh my God. Okay.
credible stories where with multiple witnesses, and like this, these people go missing, they start behaving in erratic ways, and then they find their gear in weird places, like set neatly.
Yeah, they always find their shoes just like
the guy is a hunter in these mountains for 2 decades and goes out and then like takes his shoes off and walks 4 more miles in the snow, and like leaves all his stuff that would keep him safe stacked up neatly in one place. And like this was all happening like a mile or 2 away from a house that, he would know that he could go this way and get help, but he goes, I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Yeah,
But
that's
anyway,
like,
that's like beside the point. But like,
well, I think everything's fair game in this episode, because I think what we're building here is a case that a lot of people in the know have said that essentially alien abductions aren't always alien abductions. But a lot of the elements are true. They are messing with people's minds. They do have the drugs and the ability to give you false memories. They do have the technology to swoop in and like man-made UFOs. These are not necessarily voluntary situations.
well, okay, there could be both.
I think there's both.
There could be abductions perpetuated by humans for nefarious means and for benevolent means. And both of those things you would want to protect. You would want to keep that a secret, essentially. Because the implications of one, obviously the U.S. or, some human actor is abducting other humans for nefarious means. That's bad. We don't want people to get fucking terrified.
Right.
Or that truth to be discovered. It invalidates the power structure that we have, which keeps food in the grocery stores. And on the other side, that it could be that these are love and light beings that can be summoned by individuals, and that would also invalidate the power structure and control system.
Right.
So both to maintain a status quo.
Well, that's essentially what Greer's saying.
To keep fucking Doritos on the shelf. Please God, do not disrupt the supply of Doritos, or I will become a terrorist.
They're already $6.
I will become a lunatic.
But here's what scares me more is I don't think it's as simple as both. Because I don't believe, and maybe I've just believed this for so long because of the nefarious abduction stories, and maybe all those nefarious abduction stories are actually people. I just believe the evidence that what the alien abductions are some force of evil. I believe that so much. Maybe I've been psyoped that I think it's like 3 or 4 things. 5, 6, 7, 8 things. You know what I mean? Like, if they're summoning shit,
it could be all of the things we've discussed, as they could all be happening.
There could be evil abductions. There could be love and light ones. There could be humans abducting people for good reasons. There could be humans abducting people for bad reasons. There could be humans working on behalf of aliens, doing the work for the aliens.
There's always like gray men somewhere in the middle who just end up there because of their knowledge of something, and they're like trapped in a situation. Essentially, they can't act in one way or the other. It's all like circumstance. It's not like people wake up, they have like a vision of their future at 8 years old, and they're like, I'm gonna become a MILAB abductor. You just you end up in that life,
right?
Good or bad, like because of the fucking
And everyone probably believes they're on the good side. This is
Right.
how, dude. So if there really is, I mean, oh god, damn, dude. I mean, here's where my mind goes, and I'm not going to defend it. My mind goes, there really is something real. They're in the ocean. They're demonic. But there's this lie about them coming from space. They really do be abducting people and messing with people in evil ways. And for whatever reason, we sometimes summon or work with them. And maybe we imitate them. You know, the whole idea, by the way, the idea that Jake Barber says we get psychic people is we're trying to get them to operate the craft that we recover. That's the good version. The good version is we find people who are psychic. We say, we'll pay you very well. We need you to come in and summon these crafts and try to operate them. The whole thing seems very Faustian to me.
Here's another thing I keep seeing recently is people are posting videos claiming that they were involved, and this is the Gifted and Talented Education, the GATE program. Right. It was for and I was in this as a kid, but the people, and it was like, oh, you're an advanced reader, so you skip English class and you go read like Faulkner instead of some 6th grade reading level book. You know, that's like on the surface what it's supposed to be. Or you're good at math and you go do algebra in 6th grade or whatever. So you get like an advanced learning track. But people are saying now that it was for finding people with psychic ability. Yes.
And hey, what was the whole purpose of the original? I'll let you finish. What was the whole original purpose of MK Ultra? It was not just to fuck people up on drugs. It was to see if drugs increase your psychic abilities.
Yes, that they would enhance, like, I don't know the word, inherent abilities of human beings. Well, that's it. That's like that was what they were really looking for. And also they would need like gifted mathematicians and gifted, you know, whatever. They would need those skills to support, you know.
I mean, what do shamans do? What is a DMT experience?
Oh, here's another thing I thought of earlier. Speaking of DMT, there's this guy I keep seeing videos of where he was giving people DMT and then he projects a laser onto the wall. Have you seen this guy?
And they claim to see the Matrix?
And they claim to see the code and that there's multiple layers depending on your level of focus that you see, like, and it's, yeah, he's done this with like hundreds of people now and they all experience the same thing.
Here's what...
That's completely beside the point, but...
This is my little American mind. To me... Any other time in human history, abducting people and involuntarily giving them psychoactive substances to see if their psychic abilities or you can do things psychically or summon certain things, that's just magic.
Yes.
That's just... We appear to have disclosure, and I go back to my original story, Simon Holland, he just randomly mentioned summoning things. Everything seems to go back to the government is attempting to do magic rituals. You know what I'm saying? It's just all roads lead toward...
Here's something. The building that all of our military operations are controlled from is a pentagon.
Right.
That is a well-known symbol used in magic and summoning.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's like you can summon entities inside of a pentagram and it keeps them in the pentagram. It keeps them from coming into our reality. And I have like a pretty basic understanding of like that type of witchcraft.
Yeah.
But it is like
Wait, is this why you drew a big pentagram in my room?
I drew one around the house. Yeah, don't mind the piles of salt around either.
But why? And we know MK Ultra, namesake of the show, was real and admitted to.
Yes.
And we know the whole minute who stare at goats, psychic spies, remote viewing shit was real. We know that that CIA escaping reality is real. We think about it as we're doing science.
Mm-hmm.
But they're using some of the same substances that you go down and ask a shaman to do. We're doing like synthetic shamanism with the purpose of communicating.
Technologically advanced shamanism.
Take Jake Barber at his word. You find a kid in Indonesia who is more sensitive psychically. You take him voluntarily or involuntarily. You probably hop him up on some drugs of some sort. Now you're having a full-blown... This is just something straight out of freaking the Amazon rainforest, or what they did to little kids like Delphi or whatever.
Yes.
The Oracle of Delphi. You take a little kid who's sensitive, you hop him up on something, and you just kind of see what happens, with the purpose of what? It's always with the purpose of communicating with the higher intelligence and asking them for something. And then he's talking about, take him at his words again. He says, we use these people to summon these fucking eggs at will. It's this gift from heaven. And then we don't know what to fucking do with it. So we keep hopping up these psychic people, and we take more and more, and we're trying to figure out how to drive it and how to get inside of it and shit.
If the higher intelligences are benevolent, they tend to, and this is just like, they would probably not intervene because that would be unethical. They would not give you a gift and not give everyone a gift. And if they were malevolent, they would make a bargain with you. They would say, yes, we will use this, you can benefit from this, but we need something in return.
And what is the thing you're offering in return?
Human
These
souls.
People. Yeah, that could be it. Man, this went, whoa. See, that's the thing. A lot of people, whoa. So I went from psyop to secret satanic program to, I mean, that's where my brain goes here.
Yes.
When I hear the psyop stuff, I don't think it's as simple as Greer makes it aliens good, people bad. The good people have to summon the aliens in a good way instead of this way where we treat them as a threat. You know, there's the columns elite, those people inside the Pentagon who believed the whole thing was demonic, and that's why there's a lot of records that have been destroyed, and they refuse to talk about it. And they're like, we don't even talk about it. Read your Bible, son, or whatever the guy told Lou Elizondo. He said a general told him, I know what they are. Read your Bible. Stop looking into it. It's so, my mind goes, so this is a story as old as fucking time. You find somebody who's special, you hop them up on some kind of psychoactive, you try to communicate with the entity, you try to get something out of the entity, you make a bargain with it, it's gonna end up winning that bargain. And then what, you get like a medal that you can put on a secret plane. It's always used for war.
Well, yeah, the benefit is material.
Yes.
Not, you know.
Spiritual.
Yes.
And that's about, have you ever read the book of Enoch?
I never read it.
It's the same
familiar
freaking thing. And then, you know, you look at Genesis and like the Nephilim and like they're having sex with human women and shit. It's the same story. In the Enoch, they talk about how they gave people weapons and like advanced metals to make weapons and makeup and like it's all these like sinful things, you know. I don't know why I did that, but it's the idea is that we make a bargain spiritually with these evil beings, and they give us, and they apparently, according to even like biblical stuff, have the ability to give us like physical gifts. And so this is the same fucking story, because they say, well, they gave us this egg and now we're analyzing it, and this is something that can't be made on Earth, and it maybe can't even be made in this universe, so maybe they're extra dimensional, and we're gonna figure out a way to reverse engineer it and put it on a fucking rocket so we can blow up the other people faster. You know what I mean? Like this, it just boggles my mind that you can read enough stuff. You don't even have to be in the fucking CIA. You can just read enough news to be like, oh, we're summoning demons to get advanced weapons. And in order to do that, we have to do human sacrifices, essentially. Or go on these shamanic trips. We're doing the same shit people were doing 6,000 years ago. Or more.
Mm-hmm. Since the beginning of time.
Damn, dude.
You could argue, following that logic, you could argue that the only reason we have what is considered modern society, or like that level,
Is from some of this stuff.
Yes.
Roswell
and that we wouldn't need it. If we were spiritual beings, we would not need, we would have like direct communion with the Creator. We would not need material things.
Well, not to the degree we have them. You have like human relationships, possibly, you know, like.
I mean, we don't need like a magnetic rock to, you know.
No, I get what you're saying. We wouldn't need this.
Right.
You know.
The purpose of life would completely alter.
We already
Pun
messed that up,
intended.
though.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Well,
Well, that's my episode. Tune in tomorrow for good old stand-up comedy.
we talk about farts and penises.
I promised to stay on the psyop, and I got to human sacrifice. Okay, all right. We love you.
We
Hope
love
you
you.
enjoyed.